welcome to this strategy where we're going to look at how we can use speed graphs to find horses that we want to place lay bets on. This strategy can be used across all racing, but it will benefit from those races where we have more speed ratings and speed data historically for the horses. So I've just opened a race here, which is a handicap race running later this afternoon at Kempton on the all-weather. And I've chosen all-weather because when we're dealing with speed ratings, which we are when using this strategy because we're going to be using speed graphs, the all-weather is always a good place to start because it has the least amount of conditions. You'll notice at the top of this race that the going is standard to slow, just here, on this race, and it's a distance of 1 mile 3 furlongs. I've just sorted the horses by their Betfair odds down here because generally when we're laying we're going to have an upper odds limit. Now your odds limit may be different to mine. If I'm laying, I like my odds to be very, very low as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is remove any horses whose odds are too high for us to be comfortable on. This is just to try and focus on the horse that we may consider laying. So that's the first step. So I'm going to remove all of these horses that are 10 or above, which leaves me with 3 runners, the 3 favourites, which is where we're probably going to look to lay the majority of the time. Now, from these 3 runners, obviously we have a preference for laying the favourite here, who is currently Wanasa. But we may want to consider these other 2 as well, Surprise and Gold Arch. And the aim of this strategy is to see which of the horses are going to be the most likely to perform well in the race. So we're looking for opposers to one of these 3 horses. So a clear indication that one of these 3 horses is very unlikely to win. That's what we're looking for here. So what we do is we start by opening our speed graph, which is this icon over here. And that's going to open the charts just here. Now initially these charts can look quite complicated, and if you've got a lot of horses there can be a lot of lines on them. Now don't worry, that's absolutely fine. We're going to strip them right back. But first I'm just going to show you briefly how we can use these graphs. So at the left hand side, these controls allow us to zoom in on specific sections. So if we wanted to focus on this range of speed figures, then we have them here. We can shrink like that. Or maybe we want to focus on a particular time frame. So we can move the date in here and just say focus on all races from July to the current date. But maybe we want to go back and only look at June and July primarily. So we've got those showing there. So these allow you to kind of focus in on the graph if you want to. We can remove all horses from the graph and add them all back in again, very simply. Or of course we can just remove them individually, like so. Clicking on a horse will remove it permanently. As you can see I did here with Island Jungle. I'll bring it back and it will appear down there. If I click it off, that horse is removed permanently from the graph. But for now we want them all on. We can show the sidebar or hide it like that, turn that back on, and we can hide the confidence lines, but by default they're shown, and I'll look at the confidence lines in a minute. We can also export all of the graph that we're seeing into a PDF or show it full screen as well if we want to. But the first place that we start by using the dynamic filter. So I'm going to put the filter in, and we're on a flat all-weather and we're on standard to slow. So I'm just going to apply that filter first and see how many horses we've got. Most of them have got at least 1 race. You can see that there are 7 horses left here in a race with 8 runners. So that's not too bad at all. Let me come back over to the graph. And now 1 mile 3 furlongs. We can add a distance in here. Now this distance is currently in yards. And the reasons for that is because yards is the smallest denomination of distance in racing. We have miles, furlongs and yards. If you're not sure how to convert 1 mile 3 furlong into yards, then Google is here to save us. We simply type in 1 mile in yards It appears here, 1,760 yards, and then you can just type in 3 furlongs, do the same thing, and that's 660. So we've got 1,760 plus 660, which is 1,820, 1,420, I believe. So I would simply put, I usually add and subtract a couple of hundred from that, so I'll probably put around 1,200 and around maybe 1,650 in there and apply the filter. And you can see, as expected, over distance, there's not very many. So I'm just going to open that back up, and we're looking to get as close to the race conditions today as we can, but while we still got enough races on the horses. And once we've got that, we're going to slowly scale back as we read them. So this is a handicap for 3-year-olds plus, we can see up here. So I'm just going to come back over to the dynamic filter. In the classifications, I'm going to select handicap and apply that. Still pretty good. And then just out of interest, I'm going to look for Kempton down here as the course. Kempton all weather, make sure we choose the all weather course and apply that. And that's still not bad. Okay. So this is a pretty nice graph, and we're going to start here. So the first thing we can see is Wanasar is right down here under these conditions. Just one race, standard slow, April the 12th, 2019, came third with a speed figure of 160. The error is 0. I'll come to error later on some of the other horses, but that shows we've not got enough data to indicate the margin of error on the rating. So you'll also notice next to each of the horses we have a dynamic speed rating, so that's 160.3, and that is taken based on the speed figure the horse achieved for all races currently displayed on the graph. So that means as we change these dynamic filter settings and the races change for the horses on the graph, these figures will also change as well. So we can see that actually for these settings at a glance, Wanasar is the worst on average, followed by Malarkey. And don't forget, we are looking for Wanasar, Surprise and Gold Arch. One of those 3 to go against so we can lay them. So at the moment that is there, so we can see that standard to slow. Now, interestingly, you want to look at the shape of the graphs as well. So for example here, Merhib seems to have steadily improved over these conditions. So we can see here, April the 10th, a speed figure of 226, standard to slow, and that was a class 6 over a distance of 2,419. And down here, a distance of 2,639 yards, class 5. So this class was slightly higher. If we follow this horse down, the class 6 again came 4th. But importantly, the speed figure is improving. And that's the most important thing. This horse is getting better and better. Only came 8th then, and then 10th. So Mahib looks good under these conditions. Then we can see here Malarkey, again, also looking pretty good. Had a good race back here in 2017. Then nothing really till 2018, and then the last race was January this year with a speed figure of 207. Again, a lower class than Wanasar there. Then we got Zara, who really doesn't look great. Got a good race here in a class 6, and not so good here. And there's a bit of concern there. So at the moment, what we're seeing is, and this is how we build up a picture in our own minds of the horses that we may be able to contend with. What we're seeing here is, at the moment, Mahib and Malarkey look to be strongest under the similar conditions. Wanasar isn't looking so strong, but only been one race, and it was a higher class. So now we come back to the dynamic filters, and we're just going to start removing some of these filters that we have put in. So we're going to broaden the amount of races. So I'm going to start by removing the handicap, and the order that we do this doesn't matter, but generally I will go classification and see what that looks like without classifications, and then I probably will put the classification back and then remove the course one. and then I remove the going, and finally we've just got the race type left. So if I remove the handicap filter, you can see we've got a few more horses have appeared. We've got a couple down here, Island, Jungle and Gold Arch, but they're not really a concern. Wanasa is still pretty low in the ranking, 160, so about fourth down here, fourth worst, shall we say. Merhib is still looking nice and strong, actually, outside of handicaps, possibly a bit stronger, to be honest, outside of handicaps. But Surprise has now come in, which is one of our horses, looking nice and strong, obviously in the non-handicap races overall. Now these two speed ratings have let him down a bit, and if we take a look at these, we can see that was Class 5, a distance of 1,760, and that was Class 5, a distance of 2,639. Moving over here, the horse has obviously improved. Big time difference here. That was 22nd of October 2018 up to 5th of January 2019. So quite a break before it came back to similar conditions, and now has been performing well with the last race in February over similar conditions with a strong rating. So that's good. Otherwise, the image stays very similar to as it was before. So we're going to come back here, I'm going to put handicap back on, and I'm going to remove Kempton. Okay, and a slightly different picture again, but Wanasa still looking pretty low. Merhib still looking nice and strong, and Surprise also looking strong, specifically in handicaps here as well, but not at Kempton. So these are all good signs so far. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to remove both handicap and Kempton. We're going to scroll back a bit. We get a bit of a bigger picture. Very similar to when we just had no handicap. Pretty much no change there, so we don't need to spend any time on it. Now, in this situation, we're probably not going to see much difference, because if I take the flat all-weather condition off, it would still be standard to slow. However, if I take standard to slow off, we're going to get a different image for the horses over all going conditions. So you can see a totally different picture here. Interestingly though, Wanasa is still not looking so strong down here. I mean, we've got a position of 6 back then. Earlier this year, a Class 5 third position, 128, but the speed figures over these are all pretty slow, even over the longer distances. And today's class is a Class 5. It's important. Golden Arch is here as well, and again, both of them are improving, which is something to bear in mind. We can see that the line is going up, but generally a win there on standard, a win there on standard, standard to slow, standard. So we're looking at the going here particularly as well, with as it's standard to slow. So there's nothing stand out here in comparison to some of the others. And if we zoom in a little bit in the time frame, so I'm just going to bring that time frame a bit closer here. We can see that actually Malarkey is still looking pretty strong. I'm just going to pop back here and see what Malarkey's odds are doing. Currently 16 to 1, odds of 17. Let's come back, and Merhib still looks like it could be quite strong. And back here, one of the shorter horses, Surprise, also looking strong, but it's particularly on standard to slow. This race was on standard to slow, and the speed figures that this horse has been putting in on standard to slow is significantly better recently than we got at Wanasa. Now finally, I'm just going to press the reset button and clear everything out, and this just gives us an overall view. I'm going to remove some of the higher odds horses from this graph. So I'm going to remove Champire and Island Jungle. Island Jungle has gone, Champire has gone. You can see here that Malarkey has got quite a lot of history back in 2018 when he was performing very well on the all-weather Class 5. Since then, he had a drop off and has been sort of slowly building up. was racing really well early this year, had a drop off here and had a bit of a break back in June, and seems to have come back in July better. So what can we get from this? We've built up a picture over the last few minutes of the horses in this race, and what we're seeing is that overall Wanasa and Gold Arch are bouncing around a bit, but if we just focus on All Weather, then we can see that they are improving, which is good, but their speed figures are still significantly worse than the other horses in the race over that race type, which is a concern. Even when racing against Class 5s races, we see that Surprise, out of the 3 horses that are currently the top 3 in the market, Surprise actually looks to be the strongest from a speed graph perspective, and looks to have an advantage there. But also it looks like Malarkey, I'm going to take Zariah out here as well because it's making it a bit hard to see, but Malarkey also looks like this could actually be quite a strong horse, again with Merhib not far behind. If we look at Merhib, possibly this horse prefers slightly longer distances, but we can see there's a win here back on 31st of May, lower class race though. So it could be that Merhib may have some class issues, but potentially Surprise looks to be a good bet with a possible of outsiders who could be strong if they can get over the class issue. So class seems to be the primary strength of Gold Arch and Wanasa, but from a speed perspective we would probably be looking at Surprise, which means we may have a nice lay bet here on Wanasa, who is the current favourite, going for Surprise. And we come back to the race card just very briefly. We can see that actually, while the odds on all these horses are dropping, but Surprise is also a course and distance winner. And with a star, that means that this horse is a course and distance winner at Kempton over 1 mile 3 furlongs. So has actually won at this track before over the same distance, which is good. If we just pop up his past history, we will be able to see that down here. Here we go. Here is that win here on the 5th of January, carrying 9-2, and the going was standard to slow. So again, all of this adds strength to Surprise being a very strong contender in this race, and likely to perform well. So for this race, we would say we think we may have found a weakness against the favourite, and we think that Surprise could actually come in and take this race quite happily, and we would consider placing our lay bet on Wanasa. As you can see, this process requires some practice. It will require a bit of experience, but over time you'll be able to go through it very quickly, maybe kind of 5 minutes or 10 minutes a race. Focusing on the races, I would suggest focusing on the races that you are most comfortable with and enjoy the most to start with. So for me, I would focus initially on All Weather, and if I wanted to narrow it down more, I would be looking at All Weather Sprints because they're my personal favourite races. I enjoy them the most and I have the most experience with them. And then from that point, once you're comfortable using the method with those particular race conditions, pulling backwards and expanding out. A very good technique while you're learning this can be to actually write down your analysis as you do it and go through it in detail that way, so you can actually look back on it after the race to see whether your thoughts played themselves out in the actual race, and whether that was most likely due to chance, or whether you got it right, or whether things happened during the race, horses got bumped, held up, stuck in the stalls, whatever it might be, that changed the shape of the race and what happened. Okay, so I've just opened the race here, the 540 at Kempton, to see what happened in it, and as we can see, on this occasion we read the race correctly. We can see that Surprise actually won the race, and the favourite Wanasa, that ended up going off at 2.88 on Betfair, came second, 1.5 lengths behind the winner. So it kind of played out as we were expecting there, and we would have won that lay bet. So that is how we go about using the speed graphs to look for lay bets and to find horses that may be stronger than the favourite or one in the top three. I prefer to look at the top three initially and narrow it down from there myself. And obviously we won't find a bet in every single race we look at, but we will find enough over the course of a day to make a tidy profit. So thank you very much for watching this video and this strategy. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them in the forum or get in touch with me through our chat widget or support widget that is on every page of the website. It'd be great to hear from you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to provide any guidance that you may want to make this work for you. Let's work together and find a way to get you using the speed graphs to find lay bets successfully. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye for now.